Iran is constantly making preparations to confront both American and Israeli special forces, this time utilizing advanced Russian capabilities and weaponry. This development has been made quite evident by the intensive flight activity of Russian military transport aircraft, specifically the Il-76, which were observed making flights from Russia directly to Iran over the course of the past 72 hours. For example, on February 14th, over the past 2 days, this aircraft was observed flying from Mineral in Russia, as we can note, across the Caspian Sea to reach, it appears, a specific location west of the Iranian capital, Tehran. The flight recordings did not clearly indicate the final destination of this aircraft, however, by carefully tracking the plane's movements, you'll observe that it made a landing in Karaj after its departure from Iran en route to Russia. This particular moment of its departure served to confirm the presence of a specific military consignment. Russia had arrived in Karaj during an extremely sensitive period just 1 day later on February 15th. Yesterday, the very same aircraft appeared from the exact same location, flying once again in the direction of Tehran, but it actually landed in Karaj. The flight recordings this time were unequivocally clear, confirming its arrival in Karaj. And then today, a third aircraft, an Il-76, took off following precisely the same flight pattern and method, also making its way to Karaj. Important Iranian sources such as Iran Observer had indicated that what is arriving here from Russia to Iran is a very important helicopter, namely the Russian Mi-20 with the same specifications approved by the Russian army, without any reduction, downgraded versions, or versions lacking several important features for Iran's benefit. Consequently, the Iranian side is obtaining here the very same helicopters that are currently being used by the Russian army, complete with all their precise specifications. There is tangible, concrete evidence that the Iranian side, through these shipments we are discussing, is very likely to acquire Mi-28s, as Iranian sources are indeed reporting. For example, if we were to head towards the zone of influence that we have been discussing, to the very point from which Russian military cargo aircraft took off, we would then observe that in this precise section we are currently passing through, there are numerous massive helicopters. If we were to approach them, we would indeed observe massive helicopters which appear to be military, and these are precisely the ones that can be loaded aboard these very aircraft we've been discussing, allowing them to head directly to Tehran without any problems whatsoever. In addition to that, there was also there were flights at the very beginning of January, how one particular flight emerged from the same area operating in a disguised manner. It was seen over Georgia naturally, but it had flown from a specific sphere of influence and then proceeded straight to the Iranian capital Tehran along with another aircraft. At the very end of December last year, specifically on the 31st of December, I also flew once again in the direction of Tehran, and this serves as the historical record. After these two flights, of course, quite unexpectedly, at the very end of last January, this helicopter that we are now seeing appeared in Iran. Through this, Iranian sources and the Iranian regime officially confirmed that the Russian Mi-28 had indeed arrived in Iran and was now operational. And from the specific analyses concerning this particular aircraft, the question arises, where exactly is it truly located? From the signs that became apparent, it was revealed that it is located at Mehrabad Airport in Tehran, specifically at this blue-colored hangar, as observed through satellite imagery. Based on these indicators, we will see that these helicopters, or this helicopter, has indeed reached this area. There was essentially a flight of Mi-28 aircraft that appeared in this manner over the Iranian capital, Tehran. This helicopter is extremely important. This helicopter is known by the name Night Hunter, and it is also referred to by NATO as the Chaos Maker. This particular helicopter is a machine that possesses the capability to fly at a speed of 34 kilometers in a single hour. Its lateral and backward flight, it can reach almost 100 kilometers per hour, and it operates at an altitude of 5,700 meters. And it is equipped with a 30mm electronic machine gun, and additionally it's armed with anti-tank guided missiles as well as short-range air-to-air missiles for its own self-defense. So why do they call it the Night Hunter? Because this helicopter possesses tremendous night vision capabilities. It is equipped with highly critical sensors and advanced imaging systems. It also features laser guidance for its specific targets. Consequently, it enjoys high precision and is capable of operating effectively in complex environments. Any complex environment, whether it's a desert or a mountainous region, this particular helicopter is capable of carrying out a great number of crucial missions, and consequently the deployment of this helicopter is now taking place directly in Tehran, and also it is being deployed in Karaj. This is clearly an important tactical matter, especially since the capital, Tehran, suffered many breaches during the 12-day dao. I played the 12-day war. The Iranian capital endured numerous strikes from Israeli aircraft, and it's widely believed that one of the approaches came from the Caspian Sea. The planes arrived to deliver blows to the Iranian neck. But what's more important than that, Sinan, is that many American and even Israeli reports have indicated that a part of the upcoming American attack on Iran is to include airdrop operations. And these landing operations could take place within this very complex mountainous environment, which extends to the north of Tehran and also Karaj. Specifically, airdrops by commando forces could achieve a great number of operations. There could be a rapid deployment of drones or even a quick installation of missiles or significant intelligence capabilities to support any additional operations that might occur in the Iranian capital, leading to the acceleration or facilitation of the process of overthrowing the Iranian regime with strikes that could extend for weeks, as Reuters recently reported.
Therefore, this helicopter is designed to gather intelligence, and it possesses the capability
for a swift and effective response to any potential threat that could specifically emerge from these particular areas, including the mountains and other rugged terrains. It can very quickly proceed to execute various maneuvers and targeting operations. Through these actions, it is possible to establish a degree of defense or develop certain defensive capabilities to effectively ward off any danger from the Iranian capital, Tehran. What's also important thus in this narrative is that danger could potentially come from afar to Iran's capital, Tehran, particularly when we consider Azerbaijan and Baku, towards which numerous Israeli military shipments have been directed, or even from Turkmenistan. A significant number of undeclared American shipments have reached this area, and it has begun to be viewed as an extremely dangerous zone. The Caspian Sea itself could potentially host military capabilities that pose a direct threat to the capital city. Therefore, the presence of these helicopters here is a crucial matter, because we must be aware that Karaj is significant. If Karaj falls, Tehran could also fall. And naturally, should the situation in Tehran become destabilized Saturday night, it could very rapidly lead to the fall of Karaj, even before they manage to gain access to all the institutions that are specific to the Iranian regime. Furthermore, the positioning of these helicopters, specifically in this particular region, when we consider Tehran or even Karaj, this is a strategically vital area because it possesses the capability to effectively address any potential threats that might originate from the Azerbaijani border, heading towards Iran's northwest. Furthermore, any potential threats that could be directed towards the missile bases which are currently deployed across the western part of the Iranian capital, Tehran, or more broadly throughout western Iran, and which have been previously used to strike numerous targets within Israel. It could also be used to strike potential American targets in the region. And these are also vulnerable to some incursions. Also, Israel or the United States might seek to dismantle these capabilities specifically, and especially Israel is seen as potentially seeking this operation, so the reaction could be swift from these helicopters with other capabilities. We also must not forget that some missile capabilities have been transferred to the east, not specifically eastern Iran, and are believed to be located in the central region as well as east of Tehran. Some tests have occurred in the Semnan area, and consequently the helicopters are in close proximity to all these locations. Furthermore, Iran's nuclear installations such as Fordo are regarded as being the closest to the southern area alongside Natanz and other sites. However, they could be seen as relatively remote. However, considering the helicopters' inherent speed and the potential for these aircraft once deployed in Karaj to then spread to other key locations. For instance, in Isfahan, having a number of these helicopters could offer significant flexibility to the Iranian side in effectively dealing with such challenging circumstances.
But also, and more importantly, the Iranian side is trying to assert control over the dangerous situation it could potentially face, and that is the demonstrations. The demonstrations are an extremely significant problem.
The Iranian side had previously received from Russia, prior to the recent demonstrations, a number of Spartak MRP vehicles which are visible here. These are armored vehicles that were widely believed to be intended for protecting Iranian leaders when moving from one location to another should war erupt once more. And these vehicles have been deployed in a number of important locations. They, of course, confront confront mines with extremely high effectiveness, capable of maneuvering and engaging. Ultimately, these vehicles were used against the demonstrations. Protests erupted, and subsequently we witnessed these very vehicles deployed in Ilam to confront the protesters. This also occurred in Sistan and Baluchistan and in several other regions, particularly after the dispersal of the demonstrations. Consequently, these Russian capabilities were utilized to maintain internal stability and order for the Iranian regime. Therefore, the presence of these helicopters along with these vehicles we are discussing, which can be deployed just like the Spartak vehicles we previously mentioned, can indeed provide protection for our missile capabilities from any potential deployment of nuclear assets as much as possible, and also confront the threat of demonstrations. Because the Iranian side and the Iranian side clearly perceives the American and Israeli plan as aircraft delivering very significant strikes deep within Iran, thereby weakening the Iranian regime. This is when protests would erupt. Consequently, one of the Iranian regime's primary tasks is to control the demonstrators as much as possible, because without the protesters and without any forces on the ground, this Iranian regime will not fall. One of the matters Iran is also planning is to utilize its missile capabilities to the fullest extent possible to target American airfields, no matter their location. For instance, if they are in the Arabian Gulf, some of the bases generally used by the international coalition forces. Any base located in the region, even if it's in Syria or even in Lebanon, will be targeted, along with the runways in Israel and the United States as allied nations. Why? If these runways are struck, then military aircraft will face considerable difficulty during takeoff. Some aircraft are capable of vertical takeoff, but F-16s, for instance, or other types will not be able to launch. Consequently, this impacts their offensive capabilities, thereby delaying their ability to launch attacks against them. And more importantly, it also appears that Iran intends to initiate a conflict in this particular region, specifically in the Strait of Hormuz, aiming to completely shut down this vital area and consequently drive oil prices to their absolute highest possible level, pushing the price per barrel to well over $200. Should such an operation be launched by the Iranian side, the implications would be significant. A strike targeting American and Israeli bases, runways, and other facilities with a focus on them and the initiation of a prolonged battle in the Strait for many weeks could somewhat place Donald Trump in a rather challenging position. It appears the Iranian wager is specifically moving in this very direction. The Iranian side fully understands that this could happen at any moment, and they must prepare accordingly. We observed that when discussing the Strait of Hormuz, Iran is clearly planning for a battle in this region. Today, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps issued a significant warning at the Strait of Hormuz. These naval maneuvers, which the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps started, and the commander of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, Mohammad Pakpor, was present. He is, of course, overseeing this entire operation, as we can clearly observe, in a very evident preparation to gain full control over the Strait of Hormuz, and they have specifically designated this operation with the title Smart Control of the Strait of Hormuz. Yet we also note that even though these military maneuvers were quite extensive, spanning a considerable area, the vessels are still navigating quite normally, completely unimpacted by the actions being carried out by the Guard. But this could be a deceptive operation by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard in preparation for a closure of this region, because Iran is under a lot of pressure and Iran has begun to see that a strike is inevitable. The American naval mobilization, we are now talking about a full third of the American fleet, with the Gerald Ford Carrier Group currently advancing towards Iran. A third of the entire American fleet is today deployed in that direction towards Iran. You'll notice that all these specific units are designated for naval purposes, and even their aerial capabilities and other assets are clearly aimed at Iran's strategic depth. Therefore, these constitute direct warnings of war and are certainly not diplomatic warnings at all, coming, of course, from the United States. And there is a continuation of these overflights. Even though the United States speaks about diplomacy and the preference for diplomacy, they also see at the same time that Iran does not want to engage. Therefore, there is a continuous mobilization of C-17 aircraft, which were seen flying today towards Europe and the Middle East. This is the special footage of these C-17 planes that we are seeing. We have received approximately more than 163 military cargo planes since January 15th until this very day. And also many KC-35 refueling aircraft have been seen departing the United States today towards Europe, expected to then proceed towards the Middle East region. It was noted that there was an interesting overflight by American KC-135 refueling aircraft, which were coming from Britain and heading towards the Middle East. Based on communications regarding the nature of this flight, it became clear that F-35 stealth aircraft are the ones currently moving towards the region, and they are being refueled by these very aircraft. These recordings confirm that we are dealing with 7 American F-35I aircraft, which are currently heading towards the Middle East. And this naturally represents a further increase in military strength. Furthermore, an RC-135 aircraft, crucial for highly sensitive reconnaissance missions for the United States, remains undetected on radar. As her last appearance was at Al Udeid Air Base, parked here, but she would disappear in some images from Chinese satellites, appearing completely gone, not present. You look for her, she's not there. In some other images, she appears to be there, and this is an indication that she is flying. Yeah, however, some recordings that emerged from the publicly announced pilot communications revealed that the RC-135 had flown at least 5 times to gather intelligence over Iranian territory. Consequently, it had deactivated its tracking devices and was actively collecting information. It is crucial to remember that before the 12-day war, this very same aircraft had been gathering intelligence for a full 19 days, and then the 12-day war began. And consequently, the more this aircraft takes to the skies and its sorties multiply, the greater the possibility and the higher the likelihood that we are drawing closer to an impending strike against the Iranian regime. Furthermore, the United States has seized one of the Iranian Ghost Fleet's vessels, namely Veronica, in order to exert significant and even greater pressure on Iran. It was sighted in Southeast Asia after having made its journey from Venezuela. This vessel is owned by China, but it has been sanctioned by the United States of America because it is involved in assisting with the smuggling of Iranian oil, and it is considered a part of the Iranian Ghost Fleet, as we have previously discussed. The United States and American forces conducted a raid to seize this vessel, and this action will significantly escalate the pressure on Iran, as Iran is now experiencing a sense of constriction and distress, with the circumstances having become exceedingly perilous. This is because its oil tankers, or those responsible for transporting its oil, are now directly under threat and facing immense pressure. And there are Israeli assessments that the United States will request Israel's direct assistance for strikes against Iranian territory. Until American CBS News came to confirm that the American President Donald Trump, during his meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu during the meeting that took place last December in Mar-a-Lago in the state of Florida, he had simply discussed with him that the United States would provide support to Israel for striking the Iranian missile program. This confirms to you that Israel could potentially carry out more than just aerial strikes, but rather there might be incursions, and this is what Iran wants to prepare for. Iran has begun to significantly raise the level of its objectives, and the Iranian Fars news agency, as we can clearly observe, published this specific image of the Dimona reactor. This strongly suggests that if there are further strikes threatening the regime, threatening its nuclear installations and what remains of them, then we will retaliate by striking the Dimona reactor. We have not undertaken this kind of operation in the past, but it is entirely possible that we might carry out such an action. Tomorrow is a very important day. This will mark the second round of talks between the United States and Iran in Geneva. Expectations are that matters may not reach a definitive resolution, especially given that Benjamin Netanyahu made an appearance in this way and somewhat discussed Israel's conditions that were presented to the United States concerning the agreement with Iran: no uranium enrichment. All nuclear reactors must be completely dismantled. Enriched uranium must be transferred out of Iran, and missile ranges must be limited to only 300 kilometers. And more importantly, he spoke of dismantling the militias, specifically the armed factions closely aligned with Iran. This particular condition is something we haven't heard mentioned before, but now here is Netanyahu himself addressing this very issue. Consequently, Israel has put forth its own set of demands, conditions that are exceedingly difficult and could be considered insurmountable from the Iranian perspective.